Hello and welcome to All Elite Morro here on the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show Network. Calling us a network. This is where the best talk wrestling. My God, do we have a lot to get into today? And my chat has disconnected instantly. Let me refresh. I've refreshed the YouTube software, so hopefully that means the chat is back working. I'm just going to get straight into it because holy shit, did we have an all-timer of utter dog shit this weekend. Potentially, no, actually, I'm going to just save my ramble for after we do the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show All Elite Morons responses from today on the Instagram. We got Oshin Mac, proud to say I survived watching Survivor Series because oh my fucking God. Me and Oshin had a chat before the show, and I think we were both kind of relatively positive that it might be fine. That it might, in fact, be fine. How wrong we were, Oshin. How wrong we fucking were. Just texting Shane there. I need him to do some tech work for me. That was Oshin's response. Neil is in with Wargames was utter gash. Just give me Dirty Dom and live. Utter gashes. I wish there was more gashes. There was barely even blood on the show. Ronan comes in with WWE are in their ultimate comfort phase right now. I think that's a huge part of the problem. They were able to con 45,000 people into a baseball stadium to watch that drivel. Ronan also says even the wrestlers just seem interested in doing everything by the numbers. Yeah, Johnny the Beast Mortis texted us that after the show about just them and their general lack of interest. Ger Banahan in with drop war games. The women's felt too choreographed. The men's had a mid-match yeet fest. We'll fucking get to that. My God. It's war games. The most dangerous match in wrestling. The match beyond. With a fucking Rhodes in there. Michelle O'Brien says, I turned it off after seeing a match. I take it I shouldn't watch the rest of the show. Good God, Michelle. I don't even know what to say. Honestly, it just felt like a giant waste of time. Mark Dowd says, this will tell you, Michelle, actually. Mark Dowd responded earlier, I stayed up to watch Survivor Series. Let's just say Papa H spit in my face and told me it's all part of the show. And Mark Dowd also said, blood and guts happening 2 weeks before War Games was a 4D chess move by TK. Tony Khan. Yes, fair to say it was. David Ayer says, thanks YouTube, forgot it was Monday. You got the old naughty notification. Here's just my brief thoughts on kind of overview of the show. Hello, Mr. David, how you doing? My brief overview of the show. I think it might have been the worst wrestling show I ever had the displeasure of seeing. And not because the wrestling was necessarily bad. It wasn't. There was some decent wrestling on the show. I thought Cena and Dominic were doing some good stuff until the finish. But it was the most empty, soulless, vacuous wrestling show that ever graced the square circle. It was vapid. It was devoid of ideas. It was lacking in any and all charm. It was a booker running on fumes. Creatively bankrupt. Ultra laziness. Was a cast of characters who just looked dead behind the eyes. Surely Punk and Cody and people like that know that this was the drizzling shits. Match 1 was built around Io doing a spot she's done every year for what feels like 7 or 8 years. Absolutely nothing new. Match 2, the Cena match, was built around reuniting the Judgment Day again. Match 3 was built around Stephanie Vakir's arse. And match 4 was built around Cody, Roman, and Bloodline drama again. With a little sprinkle of Punk and Vision drama thrown in. Why? Because storytelling and cinema, just the ultimate in emptiness, corporate soullessness. If I told you that this was booked by AI, would you be surprised? Ribshot asks, was it worse than WCW Uncensored 96? Look, probably not, but it was definitely more dead behind that. It was definitely more soulless. It definitely had less care and thought put in. Cottle Crow says, Bryan Danielson saying that WWE is a parody of professional wrestling seems to become more true week after week. This was the peak of parody. Neil says, seems a bit unfair to compare Blood and Guts and Wargames. Two totally different things. Like, incomparable. There was a spot in this that I seen someone highlighted on Twitter, and I can't remember who it was. I don't even know if it's someone I follow. It just maybe just popped up on the timeline. Where was it? Someone was standing. Was it EO standing on Becky's face, and Becky's screaming and screeching? Oh, it might have been Edge Elite, and Becky's screaming and screeching, and they had it done on a split screen with Marina Shafir standing in glass and then kicking Mina Shirakawa in the face with the shards of glass on her foot. I was like, yeah, that seems about right. So I don't think you can even compare them. Like, yeah, in fairness to WWE, there is extremely different corporate barriers placed upon them, mostly by their own doing, let's be honest. That would never allow them. Punk tried to blade in the main event, got no juice from it, and really it was just again a vacant effort at trying to be cool and edgy when it's very hard for Punk to feel cool and edgy in 2025 because of the environment that he has placed himself in and the things that he's done to kind of ingratiate himself to that environment, such as the Saudi trip. Wearing suits on Christmas Day on Netflix last year and this kind of stuff. Ribshot, I would not have paid $5,000 for a ticket. Like, what in this life would you pay $5,000 for? In terms of ticket to an event, like, yeah, you'd buy a house or a car or whatever, but like a ticket to a live event, what live event would I be willing to part with that level of money for? And there's absolutely not in the wrestling world at the minute that captures me to that level. Like, I'm including, would I fly to the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan for a major main event that really interested me? If the flights and accommodation, a little bit of a holiday, and the card itself were worth $5,000, then maybe, yeah. Arnell says, I'm convinced this is an intentional booking style now, and H knows it's bad, but the numbers are satisfying the TKO higher ups, so he won't do anything risky to rock the boat. I think that's a large part of it. I'd pay for a show of Bandito matches. If you get Bandito wrestling 9 times on a card, maybe. One lad paid $900. He didn't even get a view of the ring. He's serious. He was like watching it on screens from in the arena for $900. Holy shit. Let's kind of jump into the show match by match, because like this women's match, I had high expectations for this. I expected it to steal the show. There's a lot of great talent in this match. Those of you who've been following us for a while will know that I think Asuka is one of the best wrestlers of the 21st century. Io Sky is on an amazing run at the moment. Rhea Ripley is extremely talented. I think actually Charlotte is probably underrated by the IWC and how talented she is. Becky Lynch is obviously probably the biggest star in the history of women's wrestling. Alexa Bliss doesn't do anything for me. AJ Lee is a product of a different time where the in-ring quality wasn't as good as it is today, but she's still pretty good. Lash Legend is whatever, and as the same for Nia Jax. Bit of whatever. But this match, like, was overly choreographed, as was said in the fan responses earlier, but it was also just kind of nothing happening. Just nothing happened. It was just this like nothing happening match that just kind of went on, and then they did a couple of moves, and like there was just like no energy, no fire. The structure of the match was all wrong. I know having two in the night, you kind of have to vary up structure, but like this had no element of danger to it, and then the whole thing was built to Io doing the bin spot again over the head. But like I said, how many times, I didn't count, but have we seen her do that? Is it 4 times? 5? I feel like it's a lot of times. I feel like that's the only spot they have, and I was like, glad a bit of imagination and creativity here wouldn't go astray and come up with a variation of that. Ribshot says stupid flying bin spot. Like, how many times have they done that, Ribshot? It feels like they've done that so many times, and the whole match seemed to be built around that. And another major problem I had with this, and I think this is a bigger problem than just this match, is Becky Lynch's character. She's morphed into a kind of a Seth Rollins character. She's doing this maybe like Donald Trump type thing online, and I think the online stuff is kind of funny. But with the ridiculous dress or the ridiculous costumes and outfits or whatever you want to call it, but she's also morphed into like the ultimate cowardly heel. And that's fine, but it's such a departure from the character that she's been playing since, like, I don't know, 2016, 2017. The guts of 10 years. It's 3 years in a row she's done it, Ripshot says. But didn't she also do it before that in NXT? Like 6-7 years ago. So she's done it 3 years in a row main roster. I think she did it before that in NXT as well, at least once. So it might be 4 times then she's done it. Same spot. But when the whole match is built around getting to that spot, and then that's it, like that's the big spot. It's something that we've seen now 3 years in a row for sure, but also I think before that too. To me, that's just, again, like creatively bankrupt. Nobody has any ideas in this company. But to get back to Becky's character, right? So she played like the man and the last kicker and this like fearless badass. And even recently, she's in the ring smacking CM Punk in the face. And I know that was a heel thing, and she knew that he was never going to do anything. But we now get like this ultimate, like, I mean, like a level of cowardly where she's cowering in the ring, almost crying at the sight of AJ Lee, who's like half her size. And it's just not believable to me. It's too much of a departure from what we're used to seeing from her. And like, if you can do that story, if you want to have her act the cowardly heel, you can do it without her being an actual coward. You can do her fear isn't of the other person. Her fear is of her own inadequacies now. Maybe she's aging. She's had a child. Does she think she can still operate on the top level? And that's what's making her willing to cheat. Not that she's physically afraid of her competition, because that's just not believable. And this is the storytelling company. When you play a character for 10 years, you can't totally nuke or retcon that character into something entirely different. When you purport to be the one of character development and storyline, it's like a total departure from everything we've ever seen from Becky. And I think this is the worst version of Becky we've ever seen in WWE, maybe with the exclusion of the time she did that Dancing Leprechaun on NXT. But like, I think it's just the worst version of Becky we've ever had. And it's a shame, because like she is captivating and fantastic, but this is just boring and infuriating and frustrating. Um, Cottle Crow says, "How do you think WWE are able to do such great attendance numbers with troglodyte level booking?" Cottle, you know, I'm actually going to read out something here. And forgive me, this is going to take a moment. I was scrolling through Cage Match earlier, looking at what other people thought of this show, because I wanted to see if I was off the plantation on it. Look, you can see there, 3.85 is the Cage Match rating. Now, Cage Match is surprisingly kind to NXT, but not kind to WWE. And I came across a review that I thought was fantastic, and I hope I can find it, because there is a couple. This is I think it's a little bit further down. I found a review on it that I just thought was like the perfect summation of what this show was. And I think this will actually answer your question about why do I think they're still selling tickets on this show, or two shows like this. Uninspired, boring. So this is someone called Raining Lightning. Gave it a 1 out of 10 on Cage Match. And I'm not going to read the whole review, because I think the first half is kind of what will give us an indication of why people are still going to these shows. So the review goes like this: uninspired, boring, insulting, a complete waste of time. This feels like the norm after a WWE PLE in 2025. I would feel bad rating this show a lowly 1 out of 10. But this is a wrestling rating website, and WWE is not a wrestling company. It's not even a sports entertainment company, because entertainment is supposed to be well, entertaining. I don't understand who this product is for anymore. I can only assume children. Jey Uso stopped the Wargames match, brackets, supposedly one of the most brutal matches in WWE, to play his entrance theme again and dance on top of the cage. None of the matches were brutal. None of the stakes in the matches felt high. The Wargames matches themselves were just a vehicle for Royal Rumble style entrances. That's all WWE is these days, a sing-along concert for the fans in attendance. And I think that part sums it up. I think that sums it up perfectly. Let's just read those lines. Whoever wrote this is a genius. The Wargames matches themselves were just a vehicle for Royal Rumble style entrances. That's all WWE is these days, a sing-along concert for the fans in attendance. The fans that are paying all the money for these shows are paying to go and ooh and ah at the entrances and record the people coming out and act shocked and surprised, and that's all it's become. It's a sing along for the entrances. Now, personally, if I wanted to go to a concert, I'd just go to a fucking concert and not have my music interrupted by stupid things like wrestling, which is how these fans feel. Because if we looked at every single match, there was no crowd reaction to essentially anything. And why didn't they have the cages out there like they have in previous years for the participants in both the Wargames matches? Because they wanted to do the full entrances. If you go back to a Wargames match from 88, 89, 1990, when the next person is allowed come in, they rush to the ring. If they're a heel, the psychology is they're rushing to the ring to give their team the man advantage. If they're the babyface, they're rushing to the ring to help their team out who are against the man advantage and even the odds. And the crowd go nuts, because what did the crowd back then want to see? The crowd back then wanted to see the babyface burst into the ring, even the odds, lay out some of the heels, and you get to do that 4 or 5 times in a Wargames match back in the 80s, 90s. Now, when they don't have the cages anymore, so we get the full entrance. And what does people like Roman Reigns do? They take their time. They do their full normal entrance, because that's the part the fans are paying to see. And I think Triple H realises that. Aaron Reynolds said H could go out and shit in the ring and it'd still be a sellout next week. Rubishaw says, I think they're drawing based on where they are at the moment. There's always travelling about, so it's less chance of people seeing the stars live. Yeah, that's a fair point. Shouldn't last if it doesn't get better. I also think, yeah, it is going to get hurt by, like, if you look at, we see Raw and SmackDown live attendances have been falling. And Oshin Max says the amount of delusional coping from staunch WWE diehards I saw online after the show is mind-boggling. Yes, that's another part of it. They just don't want to believe it's as shit as it is. And we've all been there for years. Like, I stuck with WWE for many years through utter shit. Until I realised, because a lot of people who follow this company are young as well, and they don't want to believe that there's other great wrestling out there that they can watch. Now, I think part of the problem at the moment is there isn't really any wrestling company that's super inspired at the moment, like on a really hot period. There's nothing like there isn't an ECW. There isn't like a 2016 New Japan. Yes, AEW is really good, but it doesn't have that heat and enthusiasm that 95 ECW had, or 05 Ring of Honor had, or one or two of the early periods of TNA. I think AEW are better than some of them, but it doesn't have that underground heat, like, or that alternative heat that can crop up. It had it in 2021 post pandemic, but that filtered away through 2023, and they haven't fully got it back yet. And segment 2 tonight is going to be why I think they haven't fully got it back yet, because I think over the summer they're on the path to getting that back, and they haven't quite executed that fully. Like 2015 to COVID, we were spoiled. There was so, like, if you think 2015 to COVID there, Aaron, indies were on fire. The indies were on, like, I mean, like, every indie show every weekend was stacked. And then New Japan, stacked. Birth of AEW, amazing, so exciting. Even though some of the early cards in hindsight look kind of shit, but it was exciting. Post-COVID, early post-COVID AEW, super exciting. But now there isn't really a super hot alternative to WWE. So I think that's why they're still selling tickets. So yeah, I just thought this match was lame. Underuse of Rhea Ripley. She's your biggest star. User. EO doing the same old spot. Asuka and Kairi Sane kind of did nothing. Lash Legend is green as grass. Charlotte is a shadow of her former self. Alexa Bliss was never great. Edge is fine. Becky's playing the worst character she's ever played. All that came together to just create a super uninspired match. Second match then, Cena versus Dominic. I thought this match was going along fine. I've seen some people praise the injury spot on Dominic. Again, thought that was fine. I don't get the levels of praise for it. It wasn't that great. I thought the Liv Morgan stuff was just pure dumb. Like, why did she need to jump up and hug Cena but wrap her legs around her? She could have just kicked him in the nuts at any time. She didn't need to hit Dom and fool Cena. Like, she could have just walked in and kicked Cena in the nuts. I don't get it. And that stupid, like, student theatre acting she was doing with her face. Ooh, and the crowd go, oh my God, look, she changed her face. Give this thing an Emmy, man. Give it a primetime Emmy. Like, what are you fucking talking about? This is dog shit. And we're going back, and here's a stat V. I did the maths on this today. And I think this is going to blow some minds. Judgment Day are now an active faction for longer than NWO were active in WCW. Judgment Day are 7 days longer as an active faction than NWO were in their entire WCW run, all the incarnations. Combined days, Judgment Day beat NWO by 7 days. What are we doing? This has been going on since the 21st of February 2022, when Edge formed a faction with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. 21st of February 2022. It's insane to me. Do something different with any of these characters. This faction doesn't need to be going for this length of time. And now what are we going to do? What with Liv Morgan coming back? This is just going to lead to Liv and Roxanne and Raquel side-eyeing each other over Dominic, because Triple H doesn't know any more storylines than he's ran out of storylines. So he's going to go back to a few women side-eyeing each other over Dominic. And John Cena's last ever pay-per-view match is going to be used as a vehicle to further a faction storyline that has been bet to within an inch of its life over several years. John Cena's last ever pay-per-view match is now a footnote in the Judgment Day, entering year 5 of their time together. Because we're not that far from February 2026. Oshin Max says, from a Triple H standpoint, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that the same guy who was over Black and Gold NXT is trying to put this shit over. I have a point to make on that, Oshin, but I'm going to wait till a little bit later to do that, because I think it'll make sense when I say it. David Ayers says, I think Triple H got burnt by long-term storytelling during the Ciampa and Gargano feud. Now he doesn't do anything exciting because of the injuries. Again, that kind of links to what Oshin said. I'll be coming back to that. It's crazy considering they've been breaking up for half that time. Yeah, Judgment, they've been breaking up for 2.5 years. Like, they're an active unit longer than the NWO was in WCW. I'm not counting the NWO's run later in WWE, because, you know, that's an entirely different thing if you ask me. But like the original NWO run, I'm counting Wolfpack, NWO 2000, NWO fucking Black and White, NWO Hollywood, NWO B Team, all them combined. It's a shorter run than the Judgment Day. I don't even know what to say about this match. This match was literally just built around when can Stephanie do her arse move. And Nikki Bella, God love her, she don't got it. She never really had it, but she certainly doesn't got it anymore. She got this match off a series of losses. Nobody cared in the first place. There wasn't a single person in this building giving us any reaction to this except for the commentators when Stephanie did her arse move. That was it. That's all I have to say about it. I don't want to break down this match because I'm not a fucking pervert. But WWE assume that anyone who watches a Stephanie Vaquer match only cares about her doing the arse move. We've seen her wrestle. She is legit one of the best bell-to-bell and also bell-to-bell charisma women wrestlers in the world. She's fantastic. Yet every match has to be built up to her doing, what do they call it, the Devil's Kiss or some shit? It's a cool name, actually. But you can still do that move, but it doesn't have to be the focal point of her character and the match. Because it is just the focal point of the character in the match now. Into the men's Wargames. I wanted to get a picture of the Yeet part, but I couldn't find it. I'm assuming this is Austin Theory. I think WWE kind of there was leaks afterwards of that it was Austin Theory. But again, here was a match that was totally devoid of danger. And we were promised that this match would indicate several directions for WrestleMania. Now, what I got out of it was that the directions would be Cody versus Roman again and Punk versus Braun Breaker. But WWE seemed to allow, I think this feels like one that they were releasing, a leak that they were releasing to test the waters, that the direction for Punk and Breaker was actually pre-WrestleMania. They wanted to do it before WrestleMania. So perhaps the only kind of real WrestleMania direction we got out of this match was Cody versus Roman. And like Austin Theory, like who cares about Austin Theory? Who cares about Austin Theory? I guess the group needs a pin eater, so then that's fine. That's fine. The group needs a pin eater. He can be their pin eater. Oshin Max says we definitely know it wasn't Seth Rollins anyway. The curb stomp to Punk was way too clean. Seth Rollins slander. Did you hear his story about the Cybertruck recently? He got out of a car and confronted a guy because he flipped off his Cybertruck. How insecure do you have to be? He's flipping off the truck, man, not you. Jesus Christ, that guy is the most insecure top star in the history of wrestling, and that is a list of severely insecure top stars. Side note, Shawn Michaels, 1990s. Aaron Reynolds says, on a positive, Braun's the man. Braun is just fantastic. He's green. His work isn't super smooth yet. And they don't do enough house shows for it to get super smooth, but I just think belt that guy up ASAP. Let him have a mad run with the title now. Why not, like? Or let him go back and forth with Punk for the title 3 or 4 times. Who cares? It's the World Heavyweight title. It doesn't even mean nothing. It's not even your undisputed title. Just let it bounce around for a while. What does it matter? It'll look good on him. It looked good on him that time he stole it. So yeah, put the belt on the guy because he's fresh and exciting. He can do cool shit, and that's all that matters in this company. So he may as well be your top guy. Let him do cool spears. Legit top Ron snapped his neck. Oh Jesus, the Legion of Doom one. What's the move called again? The oh, why am I pulling a blank on the Legion of Doom? Death. What's it called? The chat will catch up with me after about 30 seconds. I'm sure you'll all be screaming. The Legion of Doom clothesline. I've pulled a total blank on this. But yeah, I actually thought Braun snapped his neck there as well. That was scary. That was actually the only bit of danger in this match. And then the rest of the match was characterized by people standing around staring at each other. And in the most dangerous match in wrestling, the match beyond, Doomsday Device. Thank you, everybody. Fucking Doomsday Device. This is the worst thing about being on camera, doing live, particularly live. I would have edited that out if this is pre-recorded. My recall memory, I'm not John Martin. I don't have the ability to recall anything, essentially. I've had about 25 concussions in my life. No, that's an exaggeration. Probably 2. But I don't even know. My memory is so shit. For, like, you know, I've seen every WrestleMania, some of them multiple times. Like, if I say a WrestleMania number to Shane, he'll tell me the main event. If you say a WrestleMania number to me, I'm not going to be able to tell you the main event, particularly if it's anything between like 21 and 40. They're all the same to me. I can't remember shit. But then I might remember some like random show from 15 years ago on a SmackDown or something, you know. But I just can't, like, all that stuff never sticks with me. Anyway, let's get back to this tragedy of a Wargames match. Jey Uso, like, breaks the fourth wall, stares at the camera. Let's do this thing again. And everyone has to pretend they're happy and having a great time and dancing in the ring. And this goes back to that sing-along crowd. Why are these people buying these tickets? Was it Oshin asked that or David? Cottle, sorry. I think that's why, Cottle, because people want to go and yeet in the crowd and have it up on their Instagram that they're at the wrestling yeeting, because that's become the kind of thing to do. And they had to stop a fucking Wargames match to do their little yeet and their little dance. And then it ends with a spear and a pin. It's obviously not submit or surrender, as Wargames was supposed to be. I wonder how I would love to be able to show Dusty Rhodes this Wargames match. I'd love to be able to ask Cody, off the record. I'll never tell anyone, I promise. Cody, seriously, bro, what did you think of that match? Come on, tell the truth. What do you think Cody's answer would be? And that's the funny thing there, Oshin. So Oshin said Jay pulls this shit and then wonders why people dismiss him as only an entrance. He said in an interview earlier this week that he's more than an entrance. Well, if you are then, Jay, don't stop the Wargames match to do your entrance again. And this was that thing again of, I want to reiterate that point because I think it's super important about where the priorities of this company lie, is they didn't put them in the cages so they could do all their elongated entrances. And so the fans could get their phones out and record. Oh, look, Brock Lesnar's coming. I want to record his entrance. Oh, look, it's Roman Reigns, wands up. I'll record that. Oh, class. And OTC, and he slowly ambling down to the ring while his team are in a man disadvantage against supposedly a bunch of dangerous and dastardly heels. Pointless. Soulless. Empty. corporate. This is moments and storytelling and aura farming. None of it is actual professional wrestling. So when I started this by saying I think this was the worst wrestling event I've ever watched, like I said, not in the sense that the wrestling was bad. Everyone did their moves really good. And there was a little bit of drama and everything. But also nothing meant anything. And everybody looked like they didn't want to be there. Or at the very least, they were just going through the motions. Nothing felt like it had stakes. Nothing felt dangerous or edgy. It was just an empty show. Why would I care? Why would anyone care? John Cena's doing his retirement match in like less than 2 weeks' time on a Saturday night's main event that's not even on TV. It's on a fucking streaming service. Whatever you think about John Cena, in terms of wrestlers, he is the highest profile and therefore probably the most important professional wrestler of the 21st century in terms of creating new fans, expanding the business. He was the focal point of this business for basically 12 to 14 years. He's been the biggest draw in this business this century by a country mile. Maybe The Rock early days, but that was very short. You know, The Rock's drawing power goes back into the 90s. The previous century, we'll say. But John Cena is retiring in less than 2 weeks on a show that is now not, that was originally, the show was originally signed to be on TV, the biggest fan base possible, on network television, on CBS, one of the biggest reaches of a channel in the world. That's what Saturday Night's Main Event was supposed to be, but they used Saturday Night's Main Event for Goldberg's retirement to counter program All In. They got fucking trashed in the ratings. And CBS were so pissed off they moved them onto Paramount. Their online thing that people have to get a subscription for. So John Cena's retiring behind a crappy paywall that WWE aren't even getting money out of what people pay for. They've been paid for the show already. The biggest wrestler of the 21st century is reduced to that. They couldn't even write a storyline for him for his retirement. That's how creatively bankrupt we are. What we do for Cena's retirement, we could tell a year-long storyline. We have the date since last December when we know he's retiring on the 13th of December 2025. What we do, we write a storyline. No, we'll kind of just play it by ear and then we'll kind of run out of time and dates, so we'll just do a tournament. Whoever wins the tournament the week before can face, and we might have one night on SmackDown or something to build it up. That's what they're doing. The whole tournament is just like a fugazi. It's a smoke show to give the illusion that they're building to something. They haven't built anything. They're just running the tournament that The Miz ended up in twice. It's John Cena, people. Fucking hell. And Triple H, so to get back to what people were saying about Triple H, how did the guy who was booking NXT become the guy that's booking this shit? I think it's actually kind of clear if you think about it for a minute. Well, he had an unbelievable formula method that worked brilliantly in NXT. New hot indie star debuts, goes on a run to the title, wins the title, has a short title reign, and then the next new hot indie star that just debuted beats them for the title, and then they leave and go to the main roster. And you just do that over and over again. And because there's cool different personalities come in, the formula will feel different because it's cool different personalities. It might be Balor, it might be Joe, it might be Nakamura, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, all these guys. Aaron Hanrahan says, be catching this on demand, big fan of the show, Morro. Thank you very much, Aaron. I hope I'm not too negative today. I'm going 40-minute rant on how bad I thought this show was. But you get what I mean about that method that he had in, did it with Drew McIntyre, did it with Adam Cole. Debut, run to the title, win the title, move on to the main roster when you lose the title. And then once that method was broken and Vince stopped taking the likes of Gargano and Ciampa to the main roster, Triple H didn't know what to do. We actually saw the cracks begin to form in Triple H's booking during the Ciampa, Gargano, Adam Cole years. When they weren't getting promoted to the main roster, he ended up with a logjam at the top of his cards in NXT, and he didn't know how to end storylines. He didn't know how to give a satisfying conclusion or climax unless the wrestler was moving on to the main roster. And we're seeing the same thing now with his booking of the main roster. He can't bring a storyline to a close. He can just go back to it again and again and again. He's doing it with Judgment Day. He's doing it with Cody Roman. He's doing it with Punk and Division. It's all the same thing over and over again, and nobody ever ascends the card, and nobody ever really goes down the card. It's just all the same people in all the same positions, rinse and repeat, because he doesn't have his little formula that he had from NXT Black and Gold. That's my take on it. And I think a serious reevaluation needs to be made on his ability as a booker from the NXT Black and Gold days, because we all kind of look at that with serious nostalgia, and it is one of the great runs of any professional wrestling company, but he had the perfect set of circumstances by which he could book that. And now that those circumstances don't exist for him, he isn't able to cycle people up and down the card. And I think here's actually an important part of that. I actually think Triple H is afraid to tell these wrestlers no. And you know, all these things we hear about Tony Khan, he's afraid to demote wrestlers in terms of their position. When I think he's afraid of confrontation. When Triple H was politicking behind the scenes for his own self back in the late 90s into the 2000s, he only had to convince Vince. He just had to have one person's ear, and he had to convince Vince that the best thing for Vince was to put Triple H in the best positions. But he's not able to do that with all these different personalities. He can't say no to Cody. Cody's more powerful than him. He can't say no to Roman. Roman's more powerful than him. He certainly can't say no to Brock Lesnar. He's probably scared shitless of him, and Brock's actually more powerful than him. The Emperor has no clothes, is what I'm saying. I don't know, you can agree or disagree with me on it, but I think if we look at the evidence of what we're seeing, I think that's pretty clear. He's actually more like Tony Khan than what people paint Tony Khan to be, in terms of not being able to say no to talent. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Am I gone off the reservation on that one? I'd love to hear your thoughts on my suggestion of an reevaluation of his booking prowess from the NXT Black and Gold years. Was Triple H ahead of his time and he's run out of steam? Or was it a case of the circumstances were perfect for him to be able to book that? Yeah. But that's my 43-minute rant on the shitness of Survivor Series over. I shaved my head again. I grew out my hair for a bit just to see how much hair I had left on the top. Spoiler alert, essentially nothing. Essentially nothing. I wanted to grow it out and see how bad the bald patch looked. And let me tell you, it looked terrible. So I've gone back to the zero blade. Because it just looks way better. Does The Rock still have that position in the board and all of them shares in TKO? I believe he does. Yeah, I believe he does, Cottle. And The Rock's another guy who obviously Triple H can't say no to. But I think what we really found the last few years is possibly the person backstage in WWE with the most political power at the moment is Cody. Mainly because he's the biggest draw they have and has been for 2 years. Probably 3 years, really. Not this year, it has been Cena, to be fair. But once Cena goes, they need to get Cody hot again, because there's not too many guys capable of popping a number. If you look at Cody's drawing numbers, particularly on house shows. So like house shows without Cody a few years ago were doing like 4,000. And then if Cody was announced for a house show, that would go 10,000. Like that's insane drawing power. And he had a string of 10,000. He had the longest string of 10,000 person house shows, I believe, since The Rock in 2000. That was Cody's level of draw just 2 years ago. After the year he won the title. from Roman after WrestleMania 40. Cody then went on the longest run of over 10k tickets sold at house shows since The Rock in 2000. That's insane. Or maybe 2001, but one of those years. Rock had an insane year as a house show main eventer where essentially he had 150 odd house shows where he sold 10,000 tickets or more. Cody had the longest consecutive run of house shows over 10,000 since that. So Cody's political power backstage and with people like Nick Khan and TKO is immense as a result of that. David Ayres says, people always say you have 3 to 5 years as a booker before you struggle. Yeah, like there was a lot of bookers from the 80s. I think Jerry Jarrett was one of them. And Jerry was a promoter and he did book sometimes. But what Jerry would often do is he'd book for a few months. I might be getting him mixed up with Eddie Graham. Anyway, one of them. They would book their territory for 6 months of the year, hand over the book for 6 months to allow themselves to kind of regenerate creatively, and then take over the book again for another 6 months. So they would do, the owner, like the promoter of the territory, would do 6 months on as booker and 6 months off, and hand over the book for 6 months to someone else that they hire in. You know, Triple H has essentially been booking one territory or another now for well over 10 years, 11, 12 years. So maybe he's burnt out, but also I just think that there is evidence to suggest that he was never great. Speaking of another issue I've noticed at booking, and this is one that was kind of knocking around in my head last week. I thought of it during the show last week when we were talking about Hangman's title reign. And it's something I noticed about. I was kind of thinking, why didn't AEW take off the way I felt it would after All In? I'm not saying it's been bad since then. I don't think it's been bad since then, but it hasn't felt as inspired since then. It hasn't felt like it did during that run from Revolution to All In. The post All In run hasn't felt as inspired or as urgent or as necessary as it did beforehand. And I noticed something. I went back and looked through every pay-per-view card, right? And if you look at the early portion of the year, there was a very clear booking strategy in with Hangman's ascent up the card. Okay, and the way that went was Hangman beat MJF. Then Hangman beat Ospreay. Then Hangman beat Moxley. So each pay-per-view, Hangman would beat someone who's a top guy, but he would move up to a bigger match at the next pay-per-view, beat that person, then he would move up to another match at the next pay-per-view, and then he beat that person. Now, what happened after All In was they went to Forbidden Door in London, and Hangman versus MJF. So Hangman beats Moxley, but on the next pay-per-view, the Death Riders are in the main event in the cage match against Team Ospreay. So Moxley maintained his main event position, and Hangman went into the semi-main. So actually, the winner of the previous pay-per-view went down a level technically in the eyes of the fans. Now I know they called it a lights out match, but look, we all know what they put that in the main event. It wasn't because it was lights out; it was because they wanted to do the Ospreay injury angle to finish the show. But that still relegated Hangman, despite the fact that he had become the top guy. Okay, and then Moxley goes into his feud with Darby Allin. Right, he beats him in the coffin match, but Darby comes back and beats Moxley at Wrestle Dream in the amazing I Quit match. Okay, brilliant match. Real emotional. Sting is back out. AEW flag. All that great stuff. Makes Moxley quit. The water spot, everything. Brilliant, man. Loved that match. But then we go to the next pay-per-view, Full Gear. Who's in a more prominent match at Full Gear? And I should note that the I Quit match, again, another one. So Moxley Hangman, who has beaten Moxley for the title. Hangman now is once again in the semi-main spot to Moxley, who he's supposed to have overtaken in the hierarchy. But Moxley's still in the main event. Moxley main events, loses the main event of All In, main events the next pay-per-view at Forbidden Door, doesn't obviously main event All Out, but main events again at Wrestle Dream. So 2 of the 3 pay-per-views after he lost the title, he's still in the main event when the champion is in the semi-main event, right? Darby Allin then goes ahead and beats Moxley at Wrestle Dream in the side quit match that we're talking about. But then we go to Full Gear. Darby Allin is in like what feels like a kind of a lower mid card program where he loses to Pac. But in a much more featured match, in a much more prominent position, a match that got much more focus in the build up, Moxley once again is wrestling the Kyle O'Reilly match. So what we're getting is Darby Allin beats Moxley, but he doesn't actually go above him in the hierarchy. He just goes back below him and wrestles Pac. And I'm wondering now, if we get to World's End, if Moxley's on the card, will Moxley have a match that's featured higher on that's more essential or more built into the card at World's End than Kyle O'Reilly has? He probably will. Like, Kyle O'Reilly will probably he'll beat Moxley, but what does he gain from it? He just steps back down the card. And I'm not saying this is a problem with Moxley. This is a problem with the booking. Moxley's on a generational run. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world this year. But there's a problem with the booking, and I think that's what differentiates the first half of the year from the second half of the year, and how exciting that this company has been, is that when we were seeing the wrestlers we loved in the first half of the year winning matches, it meant they were moving up the card. But in the second half of the year, winning those matches isn't moving them up the card, it's actually stagnating them. And that's become a problem with the booking. The ref bump says, hopefully Ospreay comes back fully healthy in 2026 and we get his journey to the belt. Tony Books as well. I believe Ospreay, if healthy, can maintain excitement after his crowning moment too. Ref bump, I totally agree with you. I think it's been kind of obvious all this year that Tony is really looking to Wembley 2026 as a huge night for the company, and that being Ospreay's crowning glory. But I do think he needs to plan beyond that. I just think, again, and I thought this with Hangman too this year, but Ospreay is such a generational talent that I think he should be able to maintain, like you said, excitement after his crowning moment. Like, the guy is, if he comes back healthy, these neck injuries are no joke. But I don't think there was any doubt in anyone's mind that over the last few years, Will Ospreay is the best wrestler on the planet. And we were all like super pleasantly surprised with his character work and his promos. So every match he's given us on pay-per-view has been like just a level of unbelievable that's almost hard to comprehend. Like, he's almost goes beyond judgment. It's like every match he has seems to be like almost an all-time classic. It's fucking insane. And he's so smart. He does things so perfectly. But I kind of feel the same about Hangman a lot as well. And Hangman wasn't able to do it just because the booking didn't facilitate his ability to do it. And it's the second time he's had a title reign that's been booked in that way. So then, if I think he kind of got unlucky this time as well with the injuries to Swerve and even Wardlow and Ospreay. All these and Omega, all these injuries were happening just as Hangman was getting the title, and that's probably why the booking very much centered on Moxley afterwards as well, because ideally kind of Moxley might have disappeared for a month or so after losing the title to Hangman, and that would have given Hangman the space to own the TV shows. But with all those injuries happening, that they needed Moxley around to keep ratings high. And that did possibly eat into or clog up storylines relating to Hangman. It didn't give him the space and time they needed to be established as a top program. I don't know, but it feels like something like that. But I do think 2026 is designed to be Will Ospreay's year. Most certainly. I'm not going to go through this in mad detail because I'm not going to be able to do this justice. But I read a piece today written by a woman called Trish Spears. She does a podcast called The Trish and Wrestling Show. She wrote a piece in the Social Suplex newsletter about the behind-the-scenes negotiations in regards to the Tanahashi Okada match. and the role of WWE and the role of AEW, and how Nakamura's story is incredibly interesting here. So it turns out, through her reporting, and also not just her reporting, but how she collated other people's reporting within her own, that Nakamura was actually the number one choice for the Tanahashi match at the Tokyo Dome, going back to about last January. And that they were actually deep in negotiations. But the negotiations were happening in a way that it seems that Nakamura had requested his release from WWE summer 2025 and was granted that release. But it hadn't been legally signed off on. And basically, when WWE got wind of the fact that Nakamura wanted the release to go and headline the Tokyo Dome with Tanahashi, they basically said, no, we're not releasing it, but we'll negotiate. And they saw it as an opportunity to kind of squeeze out AEW, or at the very least do damage to AEW's relationship with New Japan, which is already pretty frayed. Let's be honest. You know, a lot of talent moving from New Japan to AEW and so on and so forth. And AEW have been the kind of big brother now of the relationship when that wasn't the case in the earlier years. So WWE saw this as an opportunity, and at that stage, it's believed that Tony didn't outright say no, you can't do that match, but it felt that Tanahashi and the New Japan side didn't want to backstab their long-term partner. Also, WWE are moving into the Mexican market with AEW, and New Japan have a much longer relationship with CMLL than they do with AEW. I'm talking like going back 15 years. Naito did his excursion in CMLL. Lots of New Japan wrestlers do their early excursion in CMLL. And they didn't want to piss off CMLL as well with the AAA thing going on. So essentially that's how Nakamura was removed. Now, they had kept negotiating with Nakamura up to, I believe, potentially October. So like early October, late September time. Wonderful article. I'd highly recommend reading it. Unbelievably detailed. It's the lead story on the Social Suplex newsletter that was released like 2 or 3 days ago. Found it super interesting. I'd highly recommend it. I couldn't do it justice here trying to summarize it, but I just gave some of the highlights about the Nakamura negotiations. There was also talks with Kenny Omega to be the person for this match that were outlined. There was also talks with Naito, and some of Naito's stuff is super interesting that's outlined in the article. It's a long, super detailed article that collects reporting from various different sources, but also includes direct reporting and sourcing from the author of the article herself. And it also gives the background on Okada kind of mending his relationship with New Japan in order to be able to do this match. But also this is a match that seemingly came together pretty late in that whole process, when it became clear that WWE were seemingly, I think, kind of becoming more difficult to play ball with on the negotiations. The pivot was made more conclusively to Okada to get this match over the line. Just a wonderful piece of wrestling journalism, I thought. She's not going to listen to this, but shout out to her. I thought it was fantastic. Just something that's so rare in the wrestling industry is good, well-sourced, detailed, long-form journalism like that. And that's not a shot at like Meltzer, Sean Ross, Sapper, and them. I do think that their stuff is well-sourced, and Meltzer does do a lot of really good long-form stuff in the newsletter some Fridays. But I thought this was one of the best things I've read in a long, long time. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for today. Yeah, that's my last slide. Thanks everyone for joining me for my 43-minute rant on the current state of WWE, Triple H's booking. My, what would you call it, kind of slight dissatisfaction with current AEW booking. I was really hoping tonight, I kind of felt before Survivor Series that there was 4 matches. There wasn't going to be like crazy happening. It was just going to be one of them shows that was like totally fine and inoffensive and we could kind of breeze through it easily, and then we could spend loads of time talking about the Continental Classic, because I did want to do a Continental Classic, look through the two groups and the results we've gotten so far and where we think it's going to go going forward. And Fletcher beating Okada in the first round in a kind of a surprise loss. I wouldn't even say an upset at the minute because Fletcher's so good, but certainly it was a surprise, not an upset. But I think next week we'll have 2 rounds of the Continental Classic done. We'll have 3 to go, and we'll have a clearer picture and be able to have a look at the tournament overall. Hopefully, there isn't any mad stories that need to be addressed in detail at the start of next week's show. But we could do a super detailed Continental Classic thing next week. David Ayre says, is Moxley and Claudio going to be the final group match, and that's where the turn happens with Claudio making him tap? Could certainly see that, because I think we all still feel like we're getting the Okada Takeshita final. Does everyone still feel like that? So unless like Claudio or Moxley are going to the pay-per-view in semi-finals, they're kind of going to have to do that on TV, aren't they? It feels like a pay-per-view angle, but also I think your TV needs a bit of a shot in the arm at that type of year. I didn't cover Brett's interview. No, I didn't cover Brett's interview. Brett's interview. Like, there was so much in there. See, me and Shane did a full episode on Brett recently, and to be perfectly honest, I think I've said here a couple of times, one of my least favorite things about wrestling media is just like kind of badgering old-time wrestlers into giving out about modern stuff. Like, he was giving out about Sheamus's worked punches. I was like, I don't care what old wrestlers say about modern wrestling, and everything Brett gives out about from back in the day, to be honest, he's kind of built up the right to do that. But I also don't care what Brett thinks about modern wrestling, because he even said so himself in the interview that he doesn't even watch it, really. He doesn't watch modern wrestling. He said, who's MJF? He did a segment with MJF. I saw him on an AEW screen with MJF on, I think it was the first ever Double or Nothing, when they had Brett reveal the belt, and then MJF came out. I think, did Hangman come out to help Brett? Something to that effect. I can't really remember the angle. It was like 2019 Double or Nothing. So Brett doesn't even remember who MJF is. I am not a fan of Cornette then. No. I think like, I find they're people from that generation of wrestlers, like, everything evolves and they don't want it to evolve. They want it to be what it was to them. And I understand that feeling of wanting it to be like that. I think we all get that. Like, I think a lot of us, if any of us are Premier League soccer fans here, we'd prefer that to be like when Wayne Rooney was playing and stuff. And because now it's kind of feels again soulless and corporate. But like people like Cornette and all them, they're just so stuck in that past mentality. And like, they have value in some of the stuff they're saying, but also the genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back in. And all this energy and devotion to saying it should be like it was back then. And I just disagree with them. Like, I have eyes. I've seen Ospreay wrestle. He doesn't just do flips. Like, when Cornette says things about like Kenny Twinkle Toes and all, I'm like, I've seen him wrestle. There's loads of psychology in his matches. Yeah, like that, when he's telling like the history stuff. I love that ref bump. When Cornette is talking about history stuff, like, there's very few people, and I find the same with Meltzer as well. I hate listening to Meltzer talk about current matches, and I think the star ratings, particularly in the last few years, are bloody awful. But if an old wrestler dies that I don't know a whole lot about, maybe I know some things, but not a whole lot, and then Meltzer, when Meltzer does, like, he'll do like a 20-minute obituary on the Wrestling Observer radio, or he'll do like a big massive write-up in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and like the history aspect of it is phenomenal. But I couldn't give a shit what Meltzer or Cornette or anyone says about modern wrestling, because I have my own eyes. We can all see what we think is class. And maybe what you think is class is different to what I think is class. And I think my taste in matches are changing. Like at the moment, I used to hate like kind of bleeding and deathmatch stuff like 10 years ago. Some of my favorite shit now. I used to hate matches where they hit each other too hard, but that's some of my favorite shit now as well. At the minute I can't stop watching old Kobashi matches. Literally, like I go to turn on something, I'm like, oh, I'll just watch a Kobashi match. I was watching Kobashi versus Kensuke Sasaki there the other day. It's free on YouTube, and like 10 years ago, I think I would have hated that match. But now I love it. It's like listen to those old timers talk about it, like what Ref Bump says when they're talking about old road stories or the history, like some sort of history thing about a territory. I love that. And like, imagine if you got to interview Bret Hart, would you get more value? You'd get more clickbait out of asking him about a modern wrestler. You get much more clickbait out of that, but you get much more value asking him about like certain things about Stampede in the early 80s. That'd be so much more interesting. So much more interesting. What about Brett's accusations of Sean and Vince? That's rim shot again. Look, 1990s Shawn Michaels, nothing would surprise me. 1990s any era of Vince McMahon, nothing would surprise me. I'm not saying that they did have fornication or relations, but I just think I think that's one of the funniest things Brett has ever said. Whether it's true or not, it's fucking brilliant. David there says Kenta Kobashi versus Samoa Joe is Bret Hart's nightmare of a match. 100%. You know, when people think like Bret Hart was active in America and at the top of the card at the same time as the Four Pillars, Bret would have hated. I know he had that match with Tiger Mask in late 80s, 89 or 88, and it wasn't very good. It was fine. But late 80s Tiger Mask isn't mid 90s Misawa. They're a totally different wrestler, even though it's the same wrestler. Bret would have despised having a match with Kobashi, Kawada. He would have hated working with Kawada. He would have hated working with Misawa. Those two in particular. I think him and Kobashi could have meshed a little bit better. I think him and Taue actually would have meshed pretty well. But Misawa or Kobashi versus Bret in the 90s, people talk about, oh, like, Bret was the best American wrestler in the world at the time. They were the best guys in Japan. They would have been shit matches because Bret wouldn't have wanted to do what Misawa or Kobashi wanted to do. And like most of my life, I was a bigger fan of what Bret did. But now when I go back looking at stuff, I much prefer what Kobashi, more than anyone probably. I think recently Kobashi has become my all-time favourite wrestler. Maybe Danielson in there as well. But when I'm looking back at all Kobashi matches, like every single one of them wows me. And that's something that'll probably change too over time because, I don't know, things just change. But yeah, I think that's kind of my take on Bret in general and Cornette and I don't lump them into the same category either. I just think we could get more value out of those if we point them in the right direction of what to talk about rather than asking them about something that they totally dislike. Like, you know, we know Cornette hates most modern wrestling. I know he does praise some things as well. Where in Ireland we're from Kilkenny. All the boys in the wrestling fan wrestling show from Kilkenny. Big old Kilkenny. It's not smallish town. Lovely spot. Where are you from, Rooshot? We really want to do a live wrestling fan wrestling show podcast in Dublin sometime before an OTT show. I think that'd be awesome. If we could get like more than, I don't know, if we could get more people in the audience than we'll be on the stage, then we do it. So that would mean we need 5 people. We need to sell 5 tickets in order for us to be happy to go up on stage. I once did a play where there was more people on stage than there was in the crowd. It wasn't fun. But if there's one more in the crowd than there is on the stage, then you're cooking. And what do we have coming up this week? We have Dynamite Wednesday. It feels like it'll be a quieter week. Oh, Miss from Mayo. I love Mayo. Have you been over there? West of Ireland is beautiful. I do want to go on like a whole Western road trip. I've done it all, but in not all. I've done most of the West, but in like never in one fell swoop. Fuck it, we chat shit and just drink loads of pints. Aaron Reynolds says, yes, sir. Yeah, we need to convince Shane and Dunph. No problem convincing Johnny the Beast. I've never seen the statue of Dan O'Mahony in Cork. I've heard about it. And I only heard about it. I used to live in Cork for a few years. I only heard about it after I moved away. Ribshot goes to Mayo a couple of times a year. Well, do you know what? We're going to get one of our live shows going at a time you're going to be in Ireland, and you get joined in with your Instagram stuff and your YouTube stuff, and we'll make it an event. Someday before an OTT show, have a whale of a time, go see some wrestling, drink some pints if that's your thing. Just have a good old time. Right, everyone, thank you for sticking with us for the hour and 10 minutes. We had great concurrent viewership today. Neil had come over for a live pod. Look, Neil, we'll pair it up with an OTT show. Maybe one of the big OTT shows, like Local Rumble or something. And if people are travelling, then they'll get the OTT show, get a night of wrestling, get a pod going. All Elite Morro on Spice Up sounds good. As long as I'm not as hungover as I was recording this week's podcast. I was desperately hungover. New pod up this morning. Shane put it up this morning. We were talking about, I can't even remember what we were talking. Oh, wrestling retirements. I was so hungover. Wrestling retirements we talked about. That was good, all fun. Just go over and watch that and laugh at how hungover I am, particularly for about the first 25 minutes. I'll have a Total Extreme Morrow coming Friday again. Last Friday's one is up now. That was fun. Shane had the New Jack Bazaar up. That is hilarious. New Jack's a lunatic. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Young Kabashi might actually have a great match with Brett. Feel like he was very capable to work more traditional style with some flash like moonsaults thrown in. Yeah, certainly like 89 to 93 or 4 Kobashi would have suited Brett a lot more. I'm not sure about like the 03 to 05 Kobashi who was just smashing people to bits. I don't know if Brett would have liked that. Even the 97 Kobashi with the head drops and stuff. Dropping lads on their heads. Yeah, I don't think Brett would have liked that either. Thanks very much, everyone. See you all next week. All Elite Morrow, Monday nights, 7:30. YouTube, Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. This has been All Elite Morrow. We're the best talk